The LPGA is en français this week for the season's next major, and we are here to get you ready. Welcome to the Big Pickle, or as we would say this week in France, Le Grand Cornichon, our weekly look into the world of women's golf. I'm Grant Boone, alongside Golfweek senior writer Beth Ann Nichols. We would love it if you would subscribe to the pod, leave us a review and a rating, especially if it's good. And if we have time at the end of the show, maybe we'll finally tell you why we call this podcast The Big Pickle. We're going to be joined later in the pod by Evian champion Angela Stanford to get her thoughts on how this major championship has evolved from the days when it was come and enjoy the Lake Geneva shoreline, and now, as it's been since 2013, one of the 5 biggest events in women's golf. So that's coming up a little bit later on. Well, after a week off, the LPGA is back in action with the 4th of its 5 majors, the Amundi Evian Championship, Evian Resort Golf Club, along the southern shores of Lake Geneva. It's as picturesque a place as you'll find on the planet. But since 2013, it's also been designated by the LPGA as a major. It's a week unlike any other on the LPGA Tour. You're eating chocolate croissant for breakfast, wine for lunch. You're finishing dinner at midnight. But BA, I'm curious, you've been around a long time covering this event. What place do you think the Amundi Evian Championship has carved out for itself after a quarter century as an official LPGA event and now a decade as a major?
I think it depends on who you ask. You know, for a younger player on tour, they don't know anything other than the Evian's always been a major. And,
That's right.
And it is what it is, and what a beautiful view, and then they all have their opinions on the golf course. Yes, it's an incredible place. If you have, and what always, this is a random side note, but what always
my favorite
up is that pizza. There's a pizza place that everybody goes to. That's like the place. And I'm like, really? In France, pizza? But that's what it is. But anyways, you know, when I look at this championship and what it means to the LPGA, you know, I have to look at when it became a major and really what the landscape looked like at that time. And so, as you say, it was more of it's still a party in many respects. There's still going to be fireworks.
Trust me.
At night. You know, that the way they treat, you know, the way they wine and dine the media there is like no place else on tour.
No,
probably the world. You know, I mean, I've never experienced anything like it, even remotely close at any other event. So I can only imagine, because I'm not invited to everything the players are at, you know, and all their perks, you know, that it's even, you know, more so for them. So, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, there are a lot of differing opinions about the golf course. You know, its quirkiness. Is it fair? The championship setup. There are just so many factors going into, you know, what a lot of the old guard feel about the event. But there's no doubt about the fact that the people writing the checks and planning all of the first class events surrounding it are absolutely committed to elevating women's golf and have been for a very, very long time. I got a message from Amy Alcott just yesterday reminding me that she was the first American to ever go play the Evian. Her friend Helen invited her to come over and check it out, and she ran back and told the commissioner, we need to check this out. You know what a special place this is, and what they're doing. So, you know, I think it's evolved, obviously, over the years in many ways. But that commitment to women's golf, that commitment to standing apart and doing something different has not changed. And I tip my cap to them.
Or your beret.
Uh-huh. Or my beret.
Correct. Yeah. You know, Angela is going to have some, I think, really wise insight into how it's changed a little bit later on when she joins us as someone who first started playing it in the days when it was not a major championship, and then won it as a major, the only American to win it since it's become a major championship. It is worth noting this is the 30th year of the event. For the first 6 years, it was an LET event only. And that's in that time when Amy Alcott was coming over and realizing what a special place this is just to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first year I came was either 2001 or 2002. You're so inebriated, forget about the wine, just the views, the atmosphere, that maybe I've forgotten which year it was. It was either 01 or 02. And I remember thinking, I'm on a movie set somewhere. And I remember hearing Jacques Bonger, the tournament director, who is still going strong after all these years, and Franck Ribou, the chairman of the Danone Group, which owns Evian. Evian's part of the Danone Group. And even back then, they were less than a decade into their time hosting this event. They said, we want this to be the Masters of women's golf. They called it the Evian Masters.
Yeah.
That was the name of the tournament back then. They gave a beautiful pinkish shawl to the winner, and Monica won, and Julie Inkster won back then. There were years when they would play a major. The LPGA Championship some years was finished on a Sunday, and Evian began on a Wednesday. And I was coming to broadcast in some of those days, and I just remember the commitment they had to try to make this an elite event, and no sponsor has distributed more prize funds. It's not even close in the history of women's golf than Evian, and now partnering with the Amundi Group. But as for this year, and you look at where we are now, midway through the season, we just had the Dow Championship, the team event that Ronnie Yen and Gino Titakun won. We're halfway through one of the most indescribable seasons I can think of in all the years I've been covering the LPGA Tour. You had Nelly Korda doing things that hadn't been done in decades, winning 6 times out of 7, 6 times before June 1st. Now she's missed 3 straight cuts. Then she got a dog bite. We found out later, the day after the KPMG Women's PGA Championship, she is here this week. She did not play the LET event that she was scheduled to play in London last week, but she is here on property this week. And so we'll see how Nelly responds. The last time we saw her, she was in tears. You were there at Sahali. She was tied for second after round 1, and then shot that 81 and hit one out of bounds on the 15th hole. And everything just went so horribly wrong so quickly. And so, BA, we've talked about this a little bit in our subsequent pickles, but I'm really struggling to try to get a sense of where we are with the LPGA Tour right now, halfway through this 2024 season.
Yeah, it really feels wide open to me at this point, and which is crazy to say after somebody dominated the first half of the season, in ways that we haven't seen in, a long time. So, somebody asked me yesterday, what do you expect from Nelly Korda? And I honestly have no idea. I do know that she is as mentally tough as they come at this point. You don't win, 6 of your first 8 starts to the season without being mentally tough. So there's no question that she can rebound from all that's happened. But we won't know until tomorrow a little bit more about the severity of the dog bite that apparently happened right outside of a coffee shop in Seattle. Random dog, random occurrence. I don't know how long that kept her from being able to practice, if there's any lingering issue there. So we'll find out a little bit more tomorrow. But in terms of, how long it takes her to get back into the winner's circle, I fully expect her to get back there this season. Whether that's right away or not for a while, we'll see. But with Lily, the re-emergence of Lily Avu with the tie 100% now, no issues, no lingering pain there with her, making some clutch putts down the stretch at the Dow, riding a lot of confidence. I think she's definitely, one of the favorites, one to watch this week, Ataya that is. And of course, I mean, Lily as well, but you just get this feeling that that a big shift is coming. But what I hope happens is that someone else rises to the top, and we do have that rivalry that we really need.
Right. You'd love to see Nelly continue to play at a high level and shake off these last 3 missed cuts and have all the ships rise with the tide. Because I think you could be looking at something really, really special there. Sadly, Ronnie Yen is not going to be here. She told us after she and Gino won the Dow, Gino, Tai Titikun, that the wrist injury, kind of a hand-wrist problem that she sustained at the Mizuho in the opening round. She gutted out those final few holes on that Thursday, but withdrew and then played a couple of events. I think she, played well at the U.S. Women's Open, but and then comes back and wins Dow. So Ronnie's not here, but it's 132 players. And BA, this really is, I would say, I know it's co-sanctioned with the LET, but you look at the field, and it's gone from a no-cut 78 player type of field back in the mid 2000s before it was a major. Now you got 132. You take past champions like Angela Stanford. You take the top 50 in the Rolex ranking. So that's how we'll see the likes of Yiwan Lee making her first start in an LPGA event. She's been dominating the KLPGA. You think about what Inji Chun did back in 2015, then winning the U.S. Open as a non-member of the LPGA Tour. Then she became a member, won Evian the next year. So I'll be curious to see how Yuan plays. You do have LPGA tournament winners, but not LET tournament winners, with the exception of the Jabra Ladies Open, which is played right here at Evian, and that was Morgan Matreau. And then they go top 15 LET, order of merit. Then they go to the CME points list, and they have 6 sponsor invites, and they take the winners of the biggest amateur events. So Lottie Woad, for example, who won the Augusta National Women's Amateur. Megan Schofield, the reigning U.S. Amateur champion. They take the Latin America champ, the Asia Pacific Amateur champ, the winner of the Amateur, Melanie Green, from the U.S., first American winner since Kelly Keeney of that event, the Women's Amateur. So you really do get a nice representation of global players. But at the end of the day, this still is a major that gives a little heavier weight to the LPGA. So, it's the only one in continental Europe, of course. It's the only one outside the UK or the US. But 132, I like your pick. I think Gino's a great pick this week. We're not in the business really of trying to pick who wins. But even though it does have that European and global feel, I do think it's interesting that they have kept a largely LPGA heavy field to this.
I think that's a good thing. It's the tour to play on. It's the toughest tour. It's the deepest tour. And if it's going to be an LPGA major, it needs to be like that. So, I think there are plenty of opportunities for players to play their way in from around the world, as you've just brilliantly laid out. And I love that there's an amateur presence as well. But I don't think they've missed the mark on filling out this field. I think when we look at the list of past champions, it's a great list. It stacks up against any other major championship. So, for all the qualms, for all the qualms that people have about the golf course, which I'm not saying those are that they're not rooted in some truth. The golf course does identify, the best players in the world time and time again.
Well, we need to get this segment sponsored. This is the Judy Rankin hashtag Grant, you need to get a life stat of the podcast. But the last few years, because I love to party, I keep track of, the Rolex ranking of the major champions, each major. And there's no major that has higher ranked winners than Evian. Now, again, is that a fluke? Is it just coincidence? It might be, possibly, but it's really not even that close. I mean, the average ranking of the Evian winners since it became a major is 16th in the world. Celine last year, I think, was 15th, Celine Boutier. And the next closest, I think, is the KPMG at 21, which is also good. But I mean, and then when you take out the outlier, the one who was let's say, okay, you always take out the highest and the lowest, and you say, okay, just to try to get a better idea. it's under 10. The average ranking of the Evian. So you go back last year, Celine Boutier, Brooke Henderson was 10th in the world when she won it in 2022. Minjee Lee got her first major championship victory here in 2021. Jin Young Ko, dominant. She was second in the world when she won. That moved her back to number one. That was her second major of the year. Angela Stanford is the outlier. She was 76, but she was a player who had been around for so long and had contended in major championships for 15 years at the time. But everybody else, Inji Chun, Anna Nordquist, Lydia Ko, Hyo-Joo Kim, who shot 61 here, and the very first winner, Suzanne Pedersen. Most of them are multiple major champs. In the case of Inji and Anna, they won 3. So what we know, what you don't know is the kind of lie, the kind of bounce you're going to get around Evian Resort Golf Club. But what is predictable is the beautiful view that you're going to see, time after time, shot after shot in our coverage. And you can predict that you're going to get a really good winner. And with that, it's time to introduce our special guest. Well, our very special guest today is a 7-time LPGA winner, the only American to ever win Evian as a major, and a woman who single-handedly introduced the Horned Frog to the nation of France, the pride of TCU and Saginaw, Texas, Angela Stanford. Bonjour, bonsoir, I should say at this point, Ange. How are you?
I'm great. I feel really honored to be a part of the podcast. I finally, I feel, and I tell you what, if I miss, I have to be honest, I haven't listened to the last episode, but you're going to have to tell me where the name came from. Like, this cliffhanger can't go on forever.
Maybe if we have time at the end of the show.
Here we go.
Maybe. All right. Ange, let's start right here in the beautiful environs of Evian. I had the great pleasure of being here in September of 2018 when you emerged in what was a wild week and an even wilder back nine on Sunday. And I think my indelible image from that Sunday was you hugging the trophy, that major championship that you had wanted for so long. It might have been the longest hug you've ever given anything or anyone, to my knowledge. But take me back to that Sunday and what it meant to you to finally, after all those years, win a major.
Yeah, I remember coming over, making the trip over that year. And I had told my instructor, man, I feel like I'm doing some really good things this year. I was really frustrated. Got on the plane, came over here, it just wasn't, I was frustrated because I thought something good should be happening and it's not. And I remember playing that Friday, and I didn't look back and see what I shot, but I think it was like 66 or 65. It was one of the best ball striking days I think I've ever had in a major. And I remember thinking, well, that, it's different. My putting's better. But just that round made me think, okay, well, something good may be happening, but I never thought about winning. And then Sunday morning, I'll never forget, I was paired with Georgia Hall and MB Park. Two of the best players that you want to be with on the Sunday of a major. They take care of their business. MB looks like she's going to make everything she ever putts. So, it was just a great group for me. I got up and down on 1, made a big putt on 3 and 4. I know the putt on 4, I just kind of thought, well, that's different, and I knew I was like 5 back, I think, and started the day, but I'm like, anything can happen on this golf course. I feel very comfortable now on this golf course. So I thought if I could get within 2 in the back, it'll be good to go, maybe have a chance and make the eagle on 15. And I'll never forget walking to the 16th tee. They had that thing that kind of wraps around the scoreboard behind you. And I see my face and I see T1 and I just freaked. I just freaked out. So of course I then proceed to hit one of the worst shots I hit all week. And shout out to my friend, Christy McPherson, who said, hey, you know what your best shot on that hole was? I said, what's that? She said, the 3rd chip. And I said, thanks, K-Mac. I really appreciate that. So
Great line.
Proceed to make double there. And I stepped up on 17 and I said, I'm just going to be who I am. And I'm just going to I'm just going to hit the best shot I can here. I'm going to get back up. That's all I've ever done in my career is just get back up. Make this bomb of a birdie putt on 17. And I get to 18 and I think if I can just give myself a chance here, I got to make birdie. Hit one of the best tee shots I've ever hit there. I had 9-iron into that back pin. Like even Brooke Henderson stopped me at Pizza Rapido and said, "You were by the red square. How did you, like, you hit that good?" I said, "Yeah, I did hit that good." Hit a great 9-iron, and I'm not sure if the putt lipped out, but it kind of caught the lip, and my stomach just sank again because I was like, gosh, I came so close. And I went
By
to
the
the
way, that
locker
was a
room.
par 4, really, really, really hard par 4 the year that you won. Now it's back to being, a par 5 where you think you got to make birdie.
Exactly. Yeah. So I go to the locker room and just kind of hang out, and I could kind of see I came back out and I was watching the big screen, and I think there were 3 people, I think it was like Mo Martin, maybe Sang Kim, and somebody else had a birdie putt to just tie on 18. And then I remember hearing where Amy had hit it off the tee. She laid up. I knew she hit it short into the green. And I remember thinking, that's a hard 2-putt. That's tough. So I need to kind of mentally prepare for what's coming. And just, I think I was just in shock after that.
Yeah. It was a 3-putt.
Flowing.
Yeah. And for a long time, look, Amy's one of my friends, and you just, people, you don't want to see that happen in the very end to somebody. And it weighed on me for a long time. And I remember talking to Mike Wright at Shady Oaks, and he said, look, you got to give yourself a break, and you got to remember that you put yourself in that position. You had to be in that position to maybe have that fortune. So it bothered me for a long time, especially when it's one of your friends. And so
I love the image of you with the flag draped around your shoulders too. I just thought that was, for someone who, no one loves this country more and loves to play for their country more than you. So I thought that was extremely fitting. Angela, I know you have a lot of feels when you come back to this place now, but I know this week is especially different because this is, we think, your final major of your final season on the LPGA. And just tell us what's in your heart right now, and tell us what's in your head as you get into the thick of it.
Well, finally, gratitude. I think you go through these stages of grief, and I haven't been shy about telling people that I've been in counseling for a long time, and a lot of it was for my mother, but I did not know that the end of my career would kind of parallel that. And they're 2 really difficult things to go through at the same time. So the thing that he kind of made clear to me was, look, you're going to grieve over this too. So I think it's taken me a while to kind of get through some of those stages to where I'm so grateful now that I'm in this position. I've said this is it, and I can be grateful for it. I think the last couple of years I've been kind of angry that it's coming to an end, angry that I'm not playing better, angry that, just for so many other reasons, but I've kind of worked through that, and now I can just be here and just be grateful and thankful. And I think every player would tell you they wish they would have won more, they wish they would have done more, but to get to be here, the major that I won, be the final major I play. I think it's like 102 majors I've played. I mean, I'm sitting here staring at Lake Geneva. I mean, it's hard just not to be grateful for all of it.
Yeah, this is 100 majors for you out of the last 101. And I just think about how the majors have in so many ways defined your career. I mean, you were in your 3rd season on the LPGA Tour when you found yourself in a playoff at the U.S. Women's Open. This was back at the very beginning of, toward the very beginning of your streak of major championship appearances. And you and Kelly Robbins were there. Annika was, at the height of her superpowers at the time. And this was out in Oregon. And you go to extra holes, and Hillary Lunke, one of the biggest shockers in the history of major championship golf, women or men, gets it done. I just wonder if I would have told that Angela Stanford leaving Pumpkin Ridge, that it would be 15 years before she got a major title, would she have believed me?
No, I probably would have said, well, what's going to take me so long? Like, what are you doing? Like, no, but, and I think the other thing that I've been pretty open about is my faith. And, looking back now, like I just think about that moment in 2018 and think about all the blessings that have come from that and how much I love to play and how much I love to compete. And not that I'm saying, if I would have won back in 2003, I'm not sure I'd still be playing today. And yes, I'd love to have a US Open title. That'd be great. But my passion was always playing. Like I mean, what a blessing to get to play a professional sport on the LPGA Tour for 24 years. So as much as I wish I had another major, and as much as I wish I would have won that major, I believe that somebody else is in control of this. And I mean, I couldn't have written this or scripted this any better. Like the fact that I'm playing to 46 is just, that's the blessing in all of this for me. So yes, I would have loved to have won that. And then maybe, I maybe they would have let me play this year in the US Open if I would have won that Open. So,
okay.
So, maybe, but no, I'm looking back now, everything happens for a reason. And, Hillary back then was one of my best friends. So,
yeah.
It was awesome for her. And I certainly wouldn't change anything.
Well, you mentioned it a minute ago, the streak. How are you feeling about the streak now, and that it ended, obviously sooner than any of us on the screen here wanted it to end? I know you've been processing that for a little while. Where have you landed on it?
I think ultimately I landed on it just wasn't important for their tournament. And I think that's where I'm starting to kind of see things. For me, I thought it was a great story for women's golf. Yes, it was me doing it, and I wanted to do it, but I really believed in my heart of hearts it was a great story for women's golf. I think Chevron believed that, and I'll forever be grateful for them for taking that chance and then allowing me to play in Texas one last time at a major. I think KPMG would have been in. I think, but then once I got through it all and looked back at it, I just don't think it was important for their event, for the USGA Women's Open. It wasn't significant for their event, so they didn't think that they should have invited me. So that's how I've kind of processed it. And, I'm grateful that, we have some of the sponsors we do sponsoring our majors, and they believe that even one great story for women's golf is good for everybody. And hopefully one day, USGA will jump on board with that.
Well, I thought it was perfect in every way. I mean, they were talking about Lancaster being the 999th, USGA event. I thought, we got the 99th straight for Angela, and I even on Wednesday, I'm like, you always invite the last 5 Evian champions. There was no Evian in 2020, so you go back. She'd be the 5th, like everyone deleted my number at the USGA at that point.
But mine too now, Grant. So it's okay.
I'm in good company. But you mentioned the sponsors that are, by the way, you still have the all-time record, 98 straight. Let's not lose sight of that, which I can't believe will ever be even approached. I think Carlota Saganda and Lydia Ko are at 57 right now. So play hard and play long to get to 98. But you mentioned the major sponsors, and I'm just thinking about what Evian has done. 24 years as an LPGA sponsor. You go back to 2000, the year that it became a co-sanctioned event between the LPGA and the LET. You started coming, I think, mid 2000s. Really back then, I started coming, 22 years ago. The views look pretty much the same. I look a little different. But you go back then, and it really was a bit of a junket, a bit of a reward, for a really good season. They didn't just let anybody come. That there was no cut for many up until I think 07. 78 player field. It was a little bit like when you'd go to Asia if you were at the top of the money list. But when you look at what Evian and the Danone Group has done now with the Mundi partnering with them, the money they've paid in purses over these years, it dwarfs any other sponsor in the history of the LPGA Tour by my research, by my math. Maybe there's someone that I'm not thinking of, but I think it's the most, maybe by a mile. Like I think what Terry Duffy and CME have done over the last decade plus, it's amazing. But we're talking a quarter century now, and $85 million that they paid out in purses. But it is still a major that I don't know if controversial is the word, but it's still one that creates a lot of conversation. Let's put it that way. Especially among those of you, Ange, who go back to the days when you played it before it was a major, and it was this, you hear Edith Piaf, La Vie en Rose, da, 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 da. You got the caddies in the beer garden. It's like a giant slumber party. Everybody's having fun eating pizza. Then it becomes a major all of a sudden, and some were saying, no, it ought to just be what it was. How has your feeling, not just because you won, but how has your feeling about this championship changed since the time you first played it to now?
Well, I feel like this is a really kind of long answer. So if you want to stop me at some point,
it's a big pickle. We got all
the whole pickle right now.
The whole pickle.
I think you have to have the whole view of it. I think first off, I've always said this about this tour. My rookie year was 2001. When I came out on tour, I didn't know where my passport was. I was ready to drive across the country. I didn't want to fly. I wanted, that's what I signed up for. By 2010, so within, I'm maybe given it a few years there. Within 7, 8, 9 years of me being on tour, we're going all over the world. Mm-hmm. I didn't sign up for that. They asked me to renew my passport one time, and I said, no, I wanted to play at home. So that's first off, it's changed. And these kids today, passport in hand, they don't care where they're going. They're going. They certainly don't want to drive. They want to fly everywhere. They'd fly from Oklahoma to Arkansas. I mean, they don't want to drive. So I think that's first. The way the tour has changed. So for me, it was hard for me to come over here because, up till that point, I'd played the Curtis Cup in 2000. I'd stayed and played the British Am, but even that was hard. And I'm going to a country that speaks English. So, I'm a small town Texas girl. I didn't want to leave the States. So in 2006, I'll never forget, I get the phone call from the LPGA. I'm actually asleep in bed. I sit up, and I believe it was Kathy Moore. She's like, hey, you're in Evian. Do you want to go? And I was like, I guess.
Do they have Dr. Pepper? Was your first question.
Pack it. You better pack it. So I'm not afraid to say this because I'm an emotional person, but I get on the airplane, DFW to Zurich, and I cry all the way down the runway. I didn't want to go. And so that's my starting point. To now, I haven't missed a year since 2006. And I always make this trip. And I'll be very honest, it was hard for me. I didn't love it right away. But I kept giving it a chance because every time I came over here, I realized how much they just love having us. They love, just everything is so grand. And they got parties every night. And, everybody loves the beer garden. I think it just kind of became, I just realized that one, they do care. They wanted to continue to grow women's golf. Now, I think with the way it turned into a major, again, you have to remember where we were at that time. We were almost going to lose 2 majors, maybe 3. So, for Mike Wan to kind of step in and say, okay, these guys, they want to step up to the plate. And he gave them that opportunity. Again, a lot of people don't know where we were at that point. So, but then it became, okay, let's just try to do it as fast as we can. Like, let's make sure we get it on the schedule. It should have never been in September. So the years that we had the rain, and I think it was shortened twice before they moved it back to July. And I remember saying, every time we've been here in July, it's been beautiful. Why aren't we playing in July? Well, because we, fast track this, and you can't just throw it in the middle of the schedule. There are other dates. People have those dates. So I think if you see the whole scope of it, it makes sense. And did I think this would be the one major I would win? No, but I'm grateful. I mean, they treat their champions like the best of any major. So, I mean, even that, like, I saw, Jacques today, and he said, hey, I told him, I said, hey, this is my last one. He was like, what? And I'm like, seriously, like, I want you to know this is my last one. He's like, kind of walked away, and he turned around and he said, you're always welcome here. And I was like, that, so they love golf. They love women's golf, and they keep showing it. Now, have they made some grand, like the purse goes up $10 million? No, but again, this may start a fire or two, but I was always the one that said, let's slowly grow this. Like, I was also around during the Bivens years where we just grabbed tournaments because they were giving us a lot of money, and then we were taking people's dates. And I'm like, no, let's make this a slow climb. Like, yes, I love that purses are jumping, but everybody has to come with us. So I'm okay that Evian's just it's been a slow growing, but guess what? They're still here, and they still love having us. So I told you it's going to be a long answer.
That's a great answer.
It was great. Yeah. Terrific. Okay, Angela, you said a few minutes ago that if you had won the U.S. Women's Open, back at toward the beginning of your career, that you might not be playing still on the LPGA. There are so few players over the age of 40 competing week in and week out. Obviously, Lexi Thompson making major news, retiring at the end, from full-time at least, competition at the end of the season. Is it a problem? Is it something we should be worried about, that there aren't that many players competing, well into, even their late 30s, let alone into their 40s, in terms of having enough veteran voices around to express what you just expressed about looking at, the growth of Evian and can provide history and context and just a greater understanding of where the tour has been and where it's going. How do you think the tour can address this, kind of, I don't know if it's a problem. I've kind of view it as a problem, but view this lack of veteran leadership on tour.
I'm really not sure how you fix it. It sounds really bad, but it's that whole money thing. I think the more money women make out here, the faster they're going to say, okay, it used to be women would try to make it to their early 30s and then go have a baby or have a family, get married. Well, now you make your millions faster. You can get married before you're 30. You can have kids before you're 30. As bad as that sounds, like, I think that's might be one of the trade-offs coming, is that it's just maybe going to keep getting younger. I worry just from like our board standpoint. You don't have a lot of experience when it comes to people that have been out here long enough. Even listening to what Julie was saying on your podcast, like, I feel like I haven't done everything I should have. I feel like sometimes I don't know, I guess because the older veterans, it was easy for them to say, this is how you do it. To me, in my generation. But this younger generation, they don't they don't want they don't want much help. Like they don't want to hear it. But I think so. One thing I wish I would have been better on is, helping them understand how important the pro-am is, how important it is that that's not to know that that's not your day. And so I think if you don't have that older group of players to help these younger ones, I think it is a problem. I'm not sure how to fix it. I think the money is what's kind of driving that a little bit. And it's hard. Meg Mallon, Beth Daniel, Julie, Pat, people I look up to. I remember talking to Meg, and she's like, whenever Meg was leaving tour, she's like, I told the commissioner, you're going to wear these girls out. I mean, they're traveling all over the world. So even if you're 25 and you're jumping on airplanes all the time and you're going all over the world, it's still gonna run you down. I don't know if that's some of it. So, I just wish I would have been a little bit better, especially when it comes to pro-ams, because I am a firm believer in that is not your day. That has nothing to do with you. Whatever work you need to do, you better do it Monday and Tuesday. So I get frustrated when I see girls or I hear stories that people aren't paying attention to their pro-am people, they're chipping, they're playing their own ball when it's a scramble. Like, because it's not about you. That day's not about you. That's why we are here today. Like, even today, like this year, and we've built this to where it is. So I think I could have done a little bit more. But I think you're right. I think it is going to be a little bit of an issue at some point. But the thing I worry about the most is the board. The players on the board, I hope they continue to stay and play on tour, but also be a part of the board so they can help with, shaping the tour.
Well, Morgan Pressel has said multiple times privately and publicly on the air about how Lexi got that about the Pro-Am parties and also the Pro-Am days, and how she was so attentive to her Pro-Am partners, and in all of the talk of Lexi stepping away, that's a good example of someone who got it, who understood from the beginning. Speaking of Morgan, she is your fellow Solheim Cup assistant captain for a second straight Solheim Cup.
I thought you were about to say she put you up to making sure she had her dinner reservation here at the Royale this week.
Let me tell you, I'm not telling you where, but the reses are taken care of. Morgan's on the scene. The reses are solidified.
Well, I got a text here
and have been for about the last 6 months. So don't worry, we're all good.
Usually she swings by here and we have a beverage, so I'm sure that's in her calendar somewhere.
I'm sure she can find time for a titch or two. Okay. Speaking of Morgan and speaking of Solheim Cup, in what ways has the Solheim Cup shaped you as a player, and what have you learned about being a captain, which I think everyone believes is going to happen sooner than later for you, from your time as a player and then being an assistant for Stacy last year and this year?
Well, it definitely shaped me as a player, because I played a lot of team sports growing up. And that's where golf was kind of hard for me, because you're kind of there by yourself. But then you come on tour and there's something called the Solheim Cup. And not only do you get to play for your country, you have 11 teammates who, you battle all year long, and then, you get to cheer for them. So I always wanted to make that team. So I think that, if anything, extended my career, that I always just wanted to be on that team. And then now being on the other side, and I'm a late bloomer, slow learner, I like to say sometimes, but being an assistant for Pat in 21, I learned quite a bit. I mean, it's really different being on the other side. As a player, you're there for you. You prepare, you take care of your business. They tell you where to go. They tell you what to wear. Well, then all of a sudden you're the one telling them where to go and what to wear. And so there's a lot to it. And I learned a great deal from Pat. I've learned a great deal from Stacy. I hope I get the opportunity. I think it's really hard. It's really hard because you're making so many decisions, and I don't know. I I still have a lot to learn, but I love the event. Being a ping player, I love the Solheim family and what they've given to women's golf. So, yeah, I hope I get the chance.
Yeah.
I want to go back to 2015 just for a minute, which was, obviously a very memorable Sunday in the Solheim Cup. But for you especially, can you take us through gearing up for, I guess, how the vibe of the day evolved, after the episode with Suzanne Pedersen in the morning as you're finishing up day 2, and then you realize, what your role is in singles that day.
Well, all I remember that morning, because some had gone back early to finish the day, and some of us were coming off the bus. And as we were coming off the bus, I don't know who it was. I know it was with Weasel, and I can't remember who else was there, but they're like, "Oh, have y'all heard what's happened?" And no. So we get to the team room, we find out what has happened, and then we go into singles, and it just everything just heightened. Like, I think once we found out what happened, and I'd played with Allison, I want to say I was Allison's first partner, because that was her first Solheim Cup. So now and I've learned that I have a very protective nature. So as soon as I found out that she had done it to Allison Lee, I am mad. Like, I am just so mad that you feel like you could take advantage of my rookie teammate. And I think just everybody just kind of got like, wait a minute, like, it's not cool. So when they did the pairings, and again, it's something else I've been very open about. I mean, I don't have the best record in the Solheim Cup. I struggled. I've struggled a number of years. And so Julie comes in and she gives us the pairings, and I was sitting by Allison Lee in the team room, and they're doing the pairings, and she points and she's like, "You have Suzanne." And I actually looked at Allison Lee and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, like, this is unbelievable that this would line up like this." And Allison, I think, is looking at me like, "No, I think she's pointing at you." And so I'm like, "Me? Like, I'm going to go play Suzanne now." Okay. But really, I think it was just kind of that protective nature. Like, okay, it's kind of like that sibling thing. Like, I can talk to my sibling like that, but you can't. So
yeah,
I remember that match I had a headache by the time I'd gotten to like the 4th tee, because I was fist pumping everything. I think I fist pumped a 7-wood in the first fairway. Like, I've never been that high emotionally in any sporting event. So the fact that everybody, and just watching that board that day just kind of fill up with red, it was pretty cool. Like, I still have chills to this day talking about it, because it was the greatest comeback in the history of the Solheim Cup. But just the fact that you watch your teammates and they're taking care of business everywhere around you. And I remember I got to 17T and I was like, "Oh my goodness, I think I was 2 up." I was like, "I'm not going to lose. Like, I get a half point." And then I remember thinking, I have to get the full point. Like,
yeah.
So that's where the nickname for a little bit came from, Full Point. They were calling me Full Point that night because I finally got a full point.
And how about that for your last ever Solheim Cup appearance? You beat Suzanne 2-1, and you cap off that 10-6 comeback on that Sunday. Before we let you go, if Evian isn't your greatest victory, then maybe the one near home in 2020 in December at the VOA tournament is the only one that could top it. In part because of where it was, but also in part because of who was there watching. Your mom, Nan, your whole family was there. And your mom, who passed in March of 2022, is now a part of your foundation in name. And I know these last few weeks and couple of months have been really exciting for you as you've given the first Nan Stanford scholarships out. Tell us about your foundation, what you want to do with it, and how important your mom has been to you, but also just having her name on on your foundation in that way?
So the foundation started in 2009. We started giving scholarships in 2012. If I would have been a senior in high school when my mom was diagnosed, I'm probably not going to school. Most middle class kids, if the family's hit with cancer or any type of medical expense, you're probably not going to school. So we wanted to kind of focus on those kids that are kind of caught in the middle. I also had a board member who passed away from cancer and coached her daughter in basketball for a little bit. So I always knew I wanted to do something with kids. I did not know cancer would be a part of it, but the thing I learned from my mom and her journey was she had to have a purpose. Because I would ask her, I'm like, Mom, why are you getting up and going to work? She's like, I got to have a reason to get up. So I think with these scholarships, hopefully what we're doing is helping kids have a purpose, continue to get up, continue to keep going. And, we're realizing that, it's expensive. School's expensive. And we do give 4-year scholarships that are worth $10,000 over the 4 years. And that was a big key of mine was, hey, look, this isn't going to be a 1-year deal. Like, we're going to hang on to these kids. Let's make sure they graduate. If something happens, we can make sure that they're just not lost. We don't lose them in the cracks. So we decided to do an Angela Stanford scholarship for a student who has lost a parent. And I tell you, we did I was in Atlantic City and we did the interviews through Zoom, and I'm having a hard time as a 46-year-old living without my mom. So to listen to some of these kids talk about losing a parent at the age that they're at, I don't know how they do it. And the young lady that is receiving the Angela Stanford scholarship was already a part of our scholarships, but she had just lost her mom in November this past year. And, usually the committee gets on the Zoom and we talk about it. And then my executive director, Amy Green, will reach out to them. Well, this time around, we interviewed this young lady who, again, is already a part of our scholarships. And everybody on the call was like, we got to call her back right now. We got to just call her back right now and tell her. And so we did. And
that's great.
Those moments, I wish everybody that, whether they're donating to my foundation or other like those moments where you actually see somebody's life changing because of what you're trying to do. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal. So it's cool. We'll continue to give the Angela Stanford scholarship as long as we can and continue with our other scholarships as well. So we're 12 years in and we're going to keep going as long as we can.
Well, I'd love to keep going, but you've got a championship to get ready for. And, your streak is at 2 in major championships. If you win this week, I'm just saying, don't
Grant,
answer that.
This is a great stat for you to look up. Who holds the longest streak and the shortest streak? Because it's going to be 98 and then 2.
You got to 100. You finally got to 100. 98 and 2. Yes.
I think it's 202. Don't short me, Grant.
The road to 100. Like most roads, it's a little windy. But you're here. So happy
thank you.
Evian week. Enjoy it, soak it in, and I hope you play great.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I have to cut in and thank both of you, not only for allowing me to be on the podcast, but thank you for doing the podcast. I still want to know the name, but I've been able to, Grant, to work with you, Beth Ann, to be interviewed by you. And I just think you're both true professionals and women's golf inside and out. And I'm grateful that finally there's something out there that people can listen to, that you really just dive into women's golf. So I can't think of 2 better people that should be doing that. So thank you for doing that. And thanks for having me on. And just please tell me the name at some point.
Well, you know what? I was going to, but that little part you just inserted, it took up too much time. So now we probably don't have time. All right. Au revoir. Au revoir. See you at the course.
Bye. Thank y'all.
Have a great week.
Thank you.
Well, any time spent with Angela Stanford is time well spent. BA, just a thought or two about what you heard from Ange.
Well, I couldn't help but think as I was listening, gosh, we're going to miss this perspective on tour. You know, what a gaping hole she'll leave. You know, I think a lot of people don't know how important it is to have players who have the kind of perspective and veteran mindset that Angela Stanford has, just in terms of, you know, mentoring the younger players in the direction of the tour. So, you know, I thought what she had to say, you know, about the Evian was fantastic. I think the LPGA should cut that portion of the Big Pickle and play it to everybody at the next player meeting, so they can have a nice history lesson, and then cut that Pro-Am portion too as well and play that as well, because I think a lot of players need to hear that, because I think that's been lost a little bit over the years for a lot of the younger generation. So, you know, I hope Angela has a fantastic week. And I hope that, you know, she can put a bow on her major championship career in a way that gives her a lot of peace. It sounds like she's in a good place, and I couldn't be happier for her.
She's still got the fall portion of her final season. She hasn't made a huge announcement, but it is going to be her last full season on the LPGA Tour. And she knows, by the way, this is not surprising, she knows that Beth Daniel has the all-time record as the oldest winner at 46 years, 8 months, and I think 29 days. So she's already done the math and said, okay, if I win in September or later, I can beat Beth Daniel's record. So typical Ange. Yeah. Well, it's been a great time already here, and the week is just beginning. It shapes up to be another great Amundi Evian championship with this incredible cast of characters here. Almost everybody is here, and most are playing at a high level. And again, Ronan Yan is the only top player who's not here, nursing that injury. We hope to see her back, and she plans to be back at the Olympics. So our thanks to Angela Stanford for joining us. And as always, thanks to Beth Ann Nichols and our engineer, Chandler Hopeful. I'm Grant Boone. Enjoy the scenery all week like this at the Amundi Evian Championship, and we'll be with you Sunday night for the Spear to wrap it all up as we reopen the jar for yet another Big Pickle.